Of all the peoples who shaped and influenced the Spanish language, there is one that has been forgotten and even sometimes underestimated, but to whom we owe a certain part of the words that make up the language. Today, discover with us the traces of the influence left by the Germanic peoples on the Spanish language. It was the 4th century, and the great Western Roman Empire was beginning to destabilize due to growing internal political conflicts, along with major economic crises that made it impossible to sustain the empire and constant sieges by barbarian peoples. Later on, at the beginning of the 5th century, the first Germanic peoples, mainly made up of the Suebi, Vandals, and the Alans, broke into the Iberian Peninsula and settled in the provinces of Galicia, Lusitania, now Portugal, and Baetica, now Andalusia. Finally, after the complete fall of the empire, in the year 476, new Germanic kingdoms took over the territories left behind by Roman rule. As in the case of the Ostrogoths, who dominated the Italian peninsula and part of Central Europe, and the Franks, who settled in most of what is now France, and the Visigoths, who conquered almost the entire Iberian Peninsula, annihilating the Alans, cornering the Suebi, and expelling the Vandals to North Africa, thus forming the Great Visigothic Kingdom. For their part, the Anglo-Saxons settled in the British Isles and part of Northern Europe. At first, the invading Visigothic people would have remained separate from the Hispano-Roman peoples of the peninsula, mainly due to cultural and religious differences. Since the Visigoths practiced Arianism, which was a Christian doctrine that rejected the divine nature of Jesus, arguing that he had been created by God the Father, thus denying the dogma of the Trinity. However, as the years went by little, the Visigoths and Hispano-Romans gradually mixed, although the Hispano-Roman culture always dominated. So much so that the Visigoths ended up assimilating the Proto-Romance languages that were beginning to form throughout the region. Finally, with the conversion of the Visigothic king Recaredo to Catholicism in the year 587, and its later formalization at the Third Council of Toledo, in 589 the Catholic religion was established as the official religion of the Visigothic kingdom, thus eliminating all types of Arian publications established up to that date. That is why nowadays, Visigothic literary evidence in Spain is very scarce. Later on, throughout the 7th century, constant power struggles among the Visigoths led to their own weakening, until they finally succumbed to the Arab invasion. In the Battle of Guadalete in the year 711, under the rule of King Rodrigo. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell to get notified about new videos. The nearly 300 years of Visigothic rule had practically no impact on the morphological and syntactic structure of the Romance language spoken on the peninsula, due to the relatively rapid Romanization of the new occupants, although it did contribute to the enrichment of the lexicon, that is, the introduction of new vocabulary. Interestingly, the greatest contribution of the Germanic languages to the Spanish language does not correspond to the time of Visigothic settlement, but rather to the indirect introduction of words through other languages, Romance languages like French and Italian, which were influenced in a much stronger and more direct way by Germanic peoples who had acted as a true linguistic superstratum. It should also be noted that Latin made direct lexical borrowings from Germanic, as is the case with Sipo, which became Zapone and later soap. The same happened with the word taxu, which became taxo and later badger, or the word burgs, which would pass into Latin as burgus, meaning small city, and from there into Spanish as Burgo. Some of the words contributed directly as a result of the Visigothic domination are sakar, which comes from the Gothic sakan. For its part, guardia became guardia, and guardia and spaja turned into espia. The Spanish word casta comes from caste, which means a group of animals. And speaking of animals, we highlight that ganso comes from gans, and gavilan comes from gavila. Agasajar comes from the Gothic gazali, which means company. The word gaina comes from gano, which means eagerness, and rapar comes from rapon, which means to snatch. As we mentioned earlier, most of the vocabulary of Germanic origin was introduced into Vulgar Latin during the time of the invasions, and in many cases they were transmitted to Spanish through other languages, Romance languages. It's important to note the number of words from the military field, due to the control of a power exercised by the Germanic kingdoms. The Latin word velum was replaced by the word guerra, from which the current word guerra is derived. From the word guardon, which means to watch over, comes the word guardar. From raubon comes robar. From guarnian comes guarnasher and guarnier. From the word helm, which means helmet, comes the word yelmo. On the other hand, dardo comes from the Germanic dard, and albergi comes from haribergo. In other areas, such as construction, we can mention that from the Germanic sal comes the word sala, and from bastion come the words bastion, bastir, and abasticer. In the context of diplomacy, the word haribol became heraldo. From the Germanic anbachti, it passed into medieval Latin as anbachtia, and it evolved into Spanish as embajada, and the word trigua became tregua. Some adjectives are also a Germanic legacy, such as rix, which means powerful, and which became rico in Spanish. Frisk, which became fresco. Blanc, which means bright, is the origin of the word blanco. It's also interesting to analyze the Germanic origin of many common Spanish names. Such is the case of Alvaro, which comes from the words al, meaning all, and wars, meaning cautious. Fernando comes from Ferdinandus, which in turn comes from the words fridu, meaning peace or alliance, and nant, meaning bold. Rodrigo comes from Rodericus, which in turn comes from the words prots, meaning fame, and rix, meaning powerful. Argemiro is formed from the words Harris, meaning army, and Maris, meaning famous. And finally, the name Alfonso comes from the words al, meaning all, and fons, meaning prepared or brave. The contribution of vocabulary from Germanic languages continued to appear after the Middle Ages, through the modern age, and even into the contemporary age. Some of these words that are used daily today are accordion, toast, cobalt, quartz, delicatessen, hamster, kindergarten, nickel, pistol zinc, among many others. And that's all for today. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to this channel. I invite you to also turn on the notification bell so you'll know when there's a new video. See you soon.